you wrote a post or a status about the journey from blog to book that I thought was super interesting. And then also kind of goes into that kind of thing of sharing and maybe not building and writing in public, but at least you're being honest about the process. This was not something that you just kind of thought one day, like, I'm going to write this book. It was a culmination of 10 years of kind of writing and stuff until finally the straw broke the camel's back and now you're writing
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So maybe take us on that.
Yeah, it was a very emergent process. I'd say one, personality wise, I'm not the kind of person that's like, I want to be a VP or I want to be an author. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a startup, a VC backed founder. I've never really cared about the labels. I did get caught up in it in my career. And I think when I left, I leaned aggressively back towards probably even beyond my default setting, which is like, I don't want a job. I don't want a label. I don't want to like, I call that a hustle trap. Actually, it's like,
It's a good term.
saying it's like aiming at an identity rather than starting with what you want to do. So you're basically creating a lot of tension and disconnect because you're not starting with like, what are you wired to do? What do you keep doing? How do you observe that? And like make small but incremental leaps. So yeah, I'd always written. It makes sense now looking back. I kind of see all these threads connected. But it just kept showing up in my life. And especially when I left my job, I had like way more mental space and it just kind of unleashed and I loved it. And like I'd get better and I'd make deeper commitments. So I'd say, okay, I'm going to do a newsletter every week. People started reaching out and connecting, and that led to like this flywheel of conversations and writing and ideas. And like I really leaned into that for like 2 to 3 years. It was so fun. And then it got to the point where had all these disconnected ideas, and people would say, where do I start? How do I make sense of all this? Why don't you just write a book, please? So it was kind of like a capstone to, I'd say, 5 years of curiosity, research, and writing to say, okay, how do I make sense of this for myself?
Yeah.
And I like writing, so why don't I do this as a way to continue to get better as a writer? So it was to both of those projects. So it was very natural. And even throughout the process, I didn't start with like, I want to write a book, like big B book, like publisher. You have to do it in a certain way. I was like, I'm just going to make all the decisions myself and do it my way, which has been super fun.
That's awesome. And then, so maybe tease us a little bit about your writing process and how it's kind of evolved. Because I mean, knowing Tiago, right before he finished his manuscript, he had to, do the what's that, Maya Angelou, lock yourself up in a hotel for 2 weeks and finish. Like, what do you just naturally get up in the morning and just kind of want to get some deep work in? Do you kind of settle on the weekends? Like, what is kind of your writing process and how has that evolved, over the years?
Yeah, so this is my priority for 2021, and I just went into it with the mindset of if I create the space, it'll happen.
Mm.
I think I needed help along the way. I needed help in terms of like some writing coaching. Sasha Chapin, early on, I had a couple conversations with him, and like he gave me like the perfect medicine I needed, like at the right time.
That's great
Um,
to hear.
yeah, magical abilities. So he helped me like shift my mindset a bit. And I love writing, so like I'll do it anyway. I think towards the end of the process, I needed to create like deadlines for me. Okay, I'm gonna ship a final draft to this editor I'm working with, and then really just kept driving. I'd say the final week I did editing out at Creator Cabins, and that was like I probably spent 40 to 50 hours in a week just editing and rereading and editing and rereading. But a lot of times during the process, I'd kind of get stuck, and I didn't like. I'm not this kind of person that's like I need to discipline and write every day 2 hours. I just would say, all right, I'm gonna stop writing until the words appear again. So I would take
Mm.
breaks, I would wander, I would go for bike rides, but I wouldn't hold myself to like I have to get started again. And inevitably the ideas start coming back and then you gain energy again and then you dive in. So it was a lot of back and forth of that. I'd say I'm still not super disciplined in my writing, other than like leaving space in my life and then trying to write every week for the newsletter.
Yeah, sounds interesting that you had to, get some of the when maybe not the inspiration dipped, but then you could go, give it a supercharge by just like you said, walking or getting out and about and stuff like that. That's very cool. So maybe let's go into a little bit about your you also self-published this. I thought it was super great. I mean, you went further. Like we had our first ebook of the essays that we had, come out 2 years ago, and did the Gumroad thing as well. But like, what exactly would you say was your biggest kind of thing that you did or learned from that process of self-publishing? Was it like accountability, like you just kind of mentioned, communication, marketing? What was kind of that process like?
So I think there's like ebook, which is a collection of essays, and then there's like book, and
Yep.
there's actually like there's no like marginal. You can't like it's actually like a big leap. You
Yeah,
either need
sure.
to like go all into like book mode or like keep it at the collection of essays. And I originally started out saying, I'm just going to like throw my essays together, edit it a little, polish it, and publish it. I thought I'd do it in 3 months. I think early on, after talking to Sasha and realizing I wanted to explore this more personal side, that there was more, that there is a potential to write something more substantial. So I just went for it. And I think the ways I did that were like, okay, I'm going to hire an editor. I'm going to spend some money on this. I'm going to do like a book cover design.
Yep.
And just mentally, I'm going to commit to something, to write something I would want to read. Right.
That's a good way to put it. Yep.
So I didn't have a word target, but I kind of realized early on that I probably could write something around like 150 to 200 pages. I think it came in at like 190 in the size book I did. And then like, it's kind of weird though, because like the book constraint helps, right? So you're like, all right, I want chapters, I want structure, I want flow. And then a book image for the cover. But like really, you still just have like a Word document at the end.
Right. Yeah.
And then you just throw it all together on Amazon, and then like boom, like this
Boom, you
shows
got
up.
one. Look at it.
It's like it's weird. Like this was just a file. So I was telling my wife yesterday, I was like, it's kind of weird because I've just like been writing consistently for 10 years, but like now there's like this external marker of like, oh, you did this. But to me, like I just like the next week I just started like writing new stuff, and like I'm still just writing.
Well, I mean, yeah, let's go into like I wrote your also your Substack about, you finished the book, 10 reflections on the process, and that's kind of what started this question. And number 6, the joy for me was in the creation. So you still have that drive to create even after the book is kind of published. But then also I thought that this was great in the publishing process. Number 9, I was 90% done for about 4 months. It's like, okay, I see you.
Yeah, I mean, my background in consulting is great for doing creative projects. I'm really comfortable in that like dip of like not knowing what the end looks like, but just knowing to trust the process and keep going. I'm sure you experience this in like video and video editing, right? But do that enough times and you have a sense of knowing where you are in the process. I've never done a book before. So I kept thinking like, oh, I'm like 90% done. I just need to like edit and polish it. And then you go in and you're like, oh boy, this needs a lot more work. Or
Yeah,
like,
right.
it was just hard because it was really like 5 or 6 projects in one, in the sense that like I'd go into one section and then you basically spend a week like redoing the whole section. And then you step back, and one of the challenges I faced, I would get better at writing and then go back to the beginning, and my earlier writing sucked. So then I need to like, then I need to like flow through the upgraded skills through the whole book. And then so you only make it through a certain part of the book, and then it wasn't even until the end that I read through the whole thing. And when I read through the whole thing, it's like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't connect to this, like all these ideas. So yeah, I read through my book probably 5 to 7 times in the last month, and I made a lot of tweaks and moving things around, and just like minor things like places and references and sequences, things like that.
Wow. So a full project in itself after you've already done the hard stuff of writing it all down. Like,
Yeah, I think like July, I thought I was like 80 to 90% done. I was really probably 50% done. I
oh,
just had an
wow.
enormous amount of editing and rewriting to do. But yeah, it was a fun project. I kind of knew just from working on complex projects before that I could pull it off too. So I wasn't super worried about doing it.